Hello, everybody. I'm very excited for today's episode. I sit down with Collin Bass, and the majority of our discussion focuses on bringing the Catholic faith into the corporate workplace. As many of y'all know, I'm a student, and I've interviewed a ton of people from priests to mothers and professors. However, in this episode, we talk about something that maybe the majority of y'all can relate to, which is how to be a Catholic in corporate America. Collin Bass has some great insights on the topic, but we also discuss other things, such as discernment, especially for young males and discerning priesthood, but also those smaller moments of discernment in life, such as where to go to college, how to pick a job, things of those natures. We also discuss our shared interest in running and endurance sports. Once again, I'll be linking a fundraising link in the show notes because I'll be running the Chicago Marathon for the mission of Our Lady of the Angels. I would greatly appreciate your support. I also will be linking all of Collin Bass's socials in the show notes because I really believe you should go give him a follow. He's a great guy, very joyful Catholic, and he has so much to offer the community. I hope you enjoy the episode. God bless. Collin Bass, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Yes, sir. Tyler, thank you so much for having me. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome. I want you to tell everybody a little bit about like what you do and who you are and all that business.
Oh my goodness. Well, that is an absolutely loaded question because it depends on the day, what I'm doing, and like how I'm spending my time. But professionally, I'm a cybersecurity salesperson. I work for what used to be McAfee, and now it's called Trellix, but sort of in that the B2B cybersecurity space, and I run renewals for them. And then on the side, I do all sorts of things from having a podcast and a blog, and recently beginning um, creating some things on Instagram, some reels and things like that, which is how we met. And then also writing a lot. I just published a book this year for Lent. And then when I'm not doing those things, I'm likely hanging out with my wife, working out with my wife, or resting. So the schedule is always packed, but it gets me fired up to be able to start the day and see what it's going to lead me to.
Fantastic. A busy man with a lot of different skills and hats to wear. And I kind of want to talk about how you wear all those hats. So a lot of the stuff that you do outside of your corporate job is Catholic based or spiritual based, including the writing of the book and then your social media platforms. But you also have like more of a secular corporate job. How do you kind of reconcile those two things? And do you see any of them bleeding into one another, or are they pretty separate?
Yeah, no, great place for us to start, and also something I'm very passionate about. I actually finished college. In my last semester of college, I got to do a work study with my professor. So she she looked at my schedule going into senior year spring, and she was like, "Really, you're gonna waste an elective just to kind of check out and be that guy senior year? Like that's not like you." And I totally felt called out. And she was like, "Just pray about this. But what if we did a work study where you create the topic of your choice? But we have a conference coming up every single spring, and if your topic is something that we can agree on and we think could be very impactful, positively impactful to the students, maybe we create a conference out of your research." And I was like, "Wow, cool." This was Thanksgiving of my senior year before I hit the spring, and she gave me the freedom to choose any topic that I want, and I chose this exact topic: what it looks like to bring your faith, really your belief system, into corporate America, and how you live that out. And I spent the next semester, the entire semester, interviewing about 30 to 35, maybe 40 executives from all different faith backgrounds, from LGBTQ Jews, which is very rare, all the
Yeah.
way to atheism, people who believe in atheism, and then also Christians and Catholics, and kind of just a widespread of anybody and everybody who has a belief system. Maybe it's connected to their faith, maybe it's not, and how they lived it out in the workplace and what that means to them. And it was really, really cool to just understand how everyone else brings their faith into the workplace, and also how even that word faith isn't a shared word. I learned that like Jews
Yeah.
necessarily would not necessarily use that word. Um,
Hmm.
but it's kind of cool to just hear the different backgrounds and even from our Muslim and Hindu brothers and sisters, what it looks like for them. And I think we can learn a lot from asking our peers and our bosses and everyone else we work with about what it looks like for them to bring their beliefs into the workplace. And then that actually helped me in my first year at my job, beginning and I guess reigniting our faith ERG. So the employee resources groups within corporations, you can have anything you want, from veterans to um, your culture to even LGBTQ, and a lot of times it's faith as well is included in those things. And yeah, it was just really cool to be able to reignite that. There really wasn't one that was necessarily actively moving, and got to get that started with a mentor of mine who was in leadership. And really, really cool to hear all the different perspectives of what faith looks like in the workplace. But to go back to your question, that's sort of my background on what it looks like and the ways I've kind of experienced that. For me, in my work, it's not necessarily going into a customer's office and slamming my Bible down on the table and making it so clear that I'm a Christian, I'm a Catholic, and I want you to share these things. A lot of the time, and especially from my research, a lot of the time it's really just living out your life well, doing good work, doing ethical work, knowing what your boundaries are before you get into the room, but also doing business and being available and being a very kind person. And I laugh because it's very easy to notice our Mormon brothers and sisters in the workplace. They
Yes.
live their faith unlike any other faith background I've ever experienced. Now, our Muslim friends, they are very good as well at praying out certain times of the day. But the Mormons, you can usually tell who is a Latter day Saint and who is not. And they just have this glow about them. And I'm not a Mormon, I'm not from that background, but I always admire the way they live their faith, the way they go on mission, the way that they are unapologetically a Latter day Saint. And it's just really cool to see them in the workplace. And if there's any good example that you can look across the cubicles and see, it's usually one of our Mormon brothers and sisters. But that's exactly how I seek to live out my faith as well. It's doing the work well, it's being available, it's doing the running the extra mile even though you don't have to and no one's watching you. But then also really just like I said, being available. Like whenever my boss needs something, always raising your hand. And what's cool about living out your faith too is that it usually levels you up. If you're doing good work and you're always available and you're raising your hand and you're excited for what's to come next and you always want to help out for the next exciting project, usually people are going to like notice that and then want to promote you or give you a raise or give you a bonus and those kind of things. And I've experienced a little bit of that as well, which is really cool. That when you do good work, you're also rewarded for it, but that's not necessarily the reason why you do it. So yeah, to answer your question, really, it's a lot of the time just being the best version of yourself in all the ways that you can. And yeah, that's what it's looked like for me over the last only, I guess, 18 or 19 months post grad.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like how you mentioned that, a lot of like our Mormon friends, they're easy to tell like when they're working in the workplace that they're a Latter-day Saint. Um, and in my profession that I'm getting into, I'm in school for it for psychotherapy. They tell us that we can't impose any of our values on the clients, and that's pretty clear to like have ethical counseling, unless of course like you're kind of working from a Catholic therapy perspective. Of course, like you have that shared background that you can bring that into it. For the most part, you don't do any imposing or disclosing of what your own values are, but that doesn't mean that counselors don't have their own values. So what they say is we have value laden counseling, but not value imposing counseling. And I was wondering, and my reflection is I want to be a clean slate so that I can be reflective of Christ's light. So I don't necessarily have to tell them what I believe, but if I can be a joyful person and that in turn make them joyful and live out being a better person themselves, then that's a success. And typically that you see better therapeutic outcomes as well. So I was wondering, how do you live out the Catholic faith in the workplace? If it's
Yeah.
really easy for us to tell how a Mormon's living, like if you can go, oh, that's a Latter Day Saint. How do someone look at you and go, oh, that's a Catholic?
Yeah, yeah. The times that I was in the office, it was maybe a little bit easier than over Zoom because Zoom's. I work fully virtual now, but over Zoom and over Teams, people hop on a call and they hop off right away. There's no in between. There's no like socialization. There's not really any camaraderie. Maybe there's a happy hour once a month or once a quarter around your town. But
Mhm.
it is definitely harder to be unapologetically um, like conversationally Catholic.
Mhm.
But I do think part of that is on LinkedIn and social media. liking and following things that other people might see as a Catholic. Like it's very
Mhm.
easy to have a connection with somebody who is maybe you see on their profile that's a Knight of Columbus, or maybe they're part of Catholic Charities, or maybe they follow USCCV, and like if that's going to be the thing that's important to you, allowing it to pour into your business feed as well. But I think that's more virtual. But in person, it was a lot easier to at least have those conversations and at least open up the door for something like that. For
Yeah.
me, sometimes it's going to mass before work. Whenever I was in the office, it's very hard. You got to get up early, go to that 6:30 or 7 a.m. mass.
Mm.
But when someone asks how your morning was, I was always told during my research that a personal question always allows a personal answer. So whether you're going, how's your morning? Oh, I went to mass, got a good chance to go through the readings today. Or how was your weekend? Oh, I did this, and I got to go to mass and had a wonderful Sabbath, got to relax. And just noticing and realizing the opportunities to share your language. That same idea was, I mean, the same idea goes through anything in our life, whether you go for a mission trip on spring break or you go visit a cool church over the summer. Like when someone asks about how was your summer, how was your year, how was your spring break, giving
Yeah.
those opportunities to, hey, like this is what I actually did, this is what excited me, or this is what was interesting. And part of that for us as believers is not forgetting, like, hey, these are the things that I actually did. But then also not just experiences and things that you've done. I think what people realize too is that whenever you have a deeper belief system and you have this difference of
Mhm.
peace, maybe that's from the daily masses that you're going to, maybe it's from your prayer time, or just being a Catholic and living out your faith. The Lord will give you a different sense of peace if that's
Yes.
a virtue and a grace that you're seeking, and people will notice those things, and they also will likely know there's something different about you if you're not getting completely trashed at the employee happy hour, and if you're not doing
Absolutely.
unethical business. And if you say no to the situations that maybe would lead you astray, those are the opportunities where you maybe take a step. You don't need to be invasive. You don't need to say, this is, I believe in Jesus, I'm not going to drink. Like, you don't need to go that far and be abrasive with it. But know when your limit is getting close. Maybe that's one drink, maybe that's two drinks, and taking a
Mhm.
step back. Or know when what the things you shouldn't be doing. Maybe you're going to go on a business trip and people are going to go off to the forbidden place that you know is going to lead you to sin. Be able to say no, that you need to go home and call your wife or call a friend or your mom's calling. You can have any excuse to just, hey, I need to go to bed to be well rested for tomorrow. But just
Mhm.
knowing your limits. And then usually what I've noticed too from a lot of the faith conversations that I come to is people eventually will notice there's something different about you. And when they're going through a hard time, when they're doing something that they're looking for a life change or anything along those lines, they'll know they can come to you and be like, "Why do you do this? Why do you live like this?
Mhm.
Why do you experience your faith in this way?" And then, like I said before, when those personal questions come up, then you can like pour out all the graces that you have and the things that you believe.
Mhm.
You don't need to bombard somebody, but like you have an opportunity to share what you believe, and those things will come. Like
Yes.
probably, if you're praying about it and it's actively something you want to do is to live out your faith, within 6 months or a year, there will be opportunities for you to share your faith with those around you through little conversations like that, especially if you're in person. Virtually, like I said, it's a little bit harder, but it's kind of just in passing that you people notice, and then they'll know they can come to you when some life event happens. Um, like I said, they're looking for a change, or even if there's big things that are happening to them, sickness, hospitalizations, death, those kind of things. People need help, and they often need a place of peace, and they're going to look for the first person they remembered that is exuding that peace, and that you have an opportunity to be that person. So
That's
yeah, I
good.
hope that's at least answered
Yeah,
your question and kind of the direction you want to go.
absolutely. And I want to second some of that. I'm in a fairly secular field, and it's pushes a lot of like kind of more modern belief systems. And I've even read some literature on it where they've done studies, and people that have a conservative or orthodox religious background are kind of afraid to mention those things in academia. Um, but I want to second your idea of being just unapologetic about it and living it out. I always wear my Mary medallion; people can see it. I'm not making it like a thing for them to see it, but they clearly know. I'll pray my rosary in the car leading up to going to class, and they're like, "How was the drive?" That's an opportunity to talk about how I prayed a great rosary in the car ride. So doing those small things, and it definitely takes some time to not be fearful of mentioning it. So I wonder how you go about not being scared of perhaps mentioning that and maybe getting ridiculed for doing so. Because, in modernity, some people are opposed to that idea.
100%. 100%. I mean, you get to this place where you just gotta beat the fear that's surrounding you. There's this
Hmm.
idea of resistance, and a book that I called, or a book that I read this summer called the War of Art, and it's all about the idea of resistance. And oh my gosh, there's so much resistance, especially when you're trying to do something good. I mean, you can kind of laugh about it, but my wife and I, anytime we're trying to do something awesome, like go to adoration or go to mass or have a really peaceful weekend and we have these plans, there's always some small fight that tears you away from the good that was about to happen. And you're like if you take a step back and realize like, oh, this small argument is repetitive always at this time,
Hmm.
it starts to open your eyes of like, wow, this isn't an accident that every time we're about to do something good, this resistance kind of boils up. And the same thing is true right here in sharing your faith. Whenever you're about to go do something awesome, make a life change. Even my friend's about to run an Ironman, and he's training right now, and he crashed his bike today, and he was super upset, and he's like, I just don't even know if I can do this anymore. But like, you're getting so close to the goal, you're getting so close to taking action, there's always going to be that resistance that's like holding you back from getting over the top of the mountain. And I think that is very real, especially as we seek to share our faith. And like, as you seek to live out your faith, there's going to be so much resistance, whether that's just in your head, maybe that's people around you, maybe it's people judging you, maybe you take your rosary to work, you put it on your desk, and you have people say bad things like, "Oh, I can't go to mass anymore. This and this and this happened, or I had this experience." But there's going to be resistance. That's very expected. You should expect that as you live out your faith. But I think over time, as you build up like that muscle against resistance, you seem to not care. And I really felt that as I started living out my Instagram creator kind of thing for Catholicism. My Instagram page is called The Catholic Layman, and literally about 50 days ago, I started posting reels. But no joke, I've had this Instagram. You can scroll over to the bottom. I've had it since 2016, and it's taken me 10 years to post my first reel of my face. And it is so scary to be able to put that out there, to put your foot down and say like, I am Catholic and this is what I want to do, and I'm unapologetically not going to turn my back on what I believe, and this is how I'm going to live it out. And I'm not saying you have to have an Instagram page, you have to be preaching, you have to do anything like that. But there will be so much resistance, and I experienced that in this Instagram page, to living out your faith. And you just have to take one step at a time to be able to get past that. But then also lock arms with other believers and those closest to you that believe the same things. Having conversations like this, getting
Yeah.
mentors that are close to you, that believe the same thing, and are going to push you forward. And that's true not only for our faith, but for anything we do. Whether you're training for a long race, whether you're looking to challenge yourself through school, or even like get a harder job and level yourself up in a skill set, all of those things, and even tied to our faith, there's going to be resistance to go do something great. But you have to recognize that before you get started. And it's okay to be bleeding, to be cut, to be crying, and to have all these things try to tear you apart on the way. But to
Uh,
lock your eyes in on the end goal, of I want to live this out. This is important to me. But not only that, but also it's going to impact somebody else, and that's what it's about. I think it is a great place to start, to want to share, but to get to the other side of the bridge and say, hey, this is not even about me anymore. This fear, it's okay if it scares me, but it is about who I'm going to impact next, and who is going to be impacted by these things to go live it out, and their lives might change because of it. So those are a couple things that I've realized. Like, hey, there's just so much resistance in any good thing we're going to be doing,
yeah.
that you just got to recognize that before you get started.
It reminds me kind of the scenery of like Jacob wrestling the angel of God, or the word Israel, we who wrestle with God. It's kind of one of the purest forms of prayers when you have that resistance and you bring it to God and you kind of ask why. And in those moments, you're maybe not like in the most devout state you've always been in. You're not necessarily always praising or worshiping, but it's one of the realest forms of prayer because you're doubting God, but you're not doubting God's existence, and that's where He can kind of meet you there. Um, but you will kind of leave wounded or tired from the battle, and eventually you'll kind of learn why he's pulling you in a certain direction. So I love that. I would love to second the idea that by living out your faith in the workplace, and then as you said, I think you said a personal question requires, or at least opens the opportunity for a personal response. I love that. What I've seen too is that once they know you're Catholic, it's honestly a great thing for yourself as well, because now you're almost forced in a way to live out a better life. And I've referenced this a lot with just my nieces. And of course, my nieces will know that I'm Catholic. I'm their godfather. But having them in my life and being their godfather has allowed me to resist temptation time and time again, because I know I'm having to demonstrate the Catholic life for somebody more vulnerable than I am. And I don't want to lead them astray. So I definitely think that's an opportunity too to look at, of bringing the Catholic faith into the workplace. Have you seen that?
100%. And that changes the way you look at everything. Like if you're going to be following those Catholic pages on LinkedIn, you
Hmm.
can't be also liking some edgy things that maybe aren't virtuous. You probably
Yes.
can't be following and commenting things that aren't going to back that up. And that's not to put on two faces, but more so, really just to like be consistent and recognize, hey, like maybe these were areas I needed to grow in, and now I need to keep myself accountable for that. So yeah,
Mhm.
I totally see that, and that's even I see that just the same as I'm doing some of my Instagram posting now. I'll be doing these church reviews, and as I'm posting about churches, I go into a church, I take some videos. Um, I recognize people looking at me, and they're like, "Oh, this is like I've seen a couple people like recognize me, and
Yeah.
like that also changes the way I participate in mass. Not that you have
Yes.
to put on a face, but like, hey, like people are looking, and people should know that you're Catholic, and this is an important time of the week, whether people are watching or not. But now I'm recognizing myself, like second guessing, and like at least keeping a better eye on myself during mass. No dozing off, no looking away, dialing it in. Not to put on a show, but to be like, wow, like I'm keeping myself accountable now. Like these
Yeah.
things are important, and sometimes I don't recognize the significance until I see someone else's eyes on me, and I'm like, oh wow, yeah, maybe I haven't been the best Catholic in these ways, and I need to dial it back in. So no, I totally understand that.
How do you draw the line between, putting on a face and then also just like trying to like live out the faith better? I know Lent's coming up, and we'll talk a little bit about that because you wrote a book about it. But I love, like, one of the Lenten readings is about not necessarily showing the fact that you're fasting, to wash your face and not pray in public like the hypocrites do, and all that, all those things. But there's also the slight contrast to that too, where we walk around with ashes on our face. So there is a balance. So what is that balance for you, and how do you kind of discern that?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and I don't think I know anyone who has mastered that. But I think you can really get down to the depths of it, just doing some self reflection and really
Mm,
questioning why you're doing things. I see myself acting more like my friends to be more liked by them, saying
mm,
things that they say, often maybe using curse words or things I don't usually say around people that I want to be more welcomed into. And I think the same thing is true with our faith. Sometimes we hang out in a faith circle of people who have been living out their faith for longer than us, and we'll try to act cooler. We'll say more fancy things. We'll be more likely to boast about our prayer life and things like that.
mm,
And when I see someone doing that or see myself doing that, you can't cast judgment, and you can't immediately be recognizing, hey, I need to change this today. But I think over time, it's really reflecting on, are the things that I'm saying really truthful? Are they truthful to who I am? Are they truthful and consistent to the person I want to be? And with that comes consistent confession. I have a priest mentor of mine who we get grab a meal very often, and he always encourages me and everyone else to go to confession monthly. And I think when you're doing that and you're doing a deep examination of conscience and really recognizing the way that you've stood out, for me, whenever I'm doing that, I'm reflecting on the seven deadly sins. That was another
mm,
mentor of mine shared that as the best examination of conscience. And when you're really looking at the words of lust and pride and envy, and you're reflecting on the ways you've acted in those ways, it is way easier for those actions to stand out in your mind and be like, oh wow, like I was doing this in this situation. I should really like double back and check myself on that.
mm.
So I wouldn't say that I'm perfect at it. Wouldn't say that I have it figured out quite yet. But something that does help is going to confession pretty consistently. And another big thing, I got married in November, and it's a little bit easier to be
Right.
consistent and be accountable if you're telling your wife you want to be a certain way, because she'll keep me in line if I ask her to, and not in a bad way, but literally in the way that I need to be kept accountable. She sees every corner of my life, and can share those things if I am acting different around certain people or say certain things that don't sound like me.
Yeah.
So marriage definitely helps as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that you mentioned that. And first off, congratulations. That's amazing. Great news. And no, I like that, because in many ways, knowledge is power, and understanding that you can fall into that trap. is a good way of kind of preventing from doing so. I like the kind of the word of recognizing how hard you can fall and that being preventative of falling that hard. Um, and then I like that you kind of went back and mentioned about getting married. And it's true for both spouses, but I think especially for men having like a woman in your life, whether that's, a mother or a spouse or, any number of women in your life, that's important because we even see it in Genesis in terms of the bad way, where Eve gives the apple that provides the knowledge that now they're naked and they have all this knowledge now that they ate from the fruit. And then you see it also in the new Eve or Mary in the first public miracle with Jesus, where she lets him know that the wines run empty. So like women are very good at making men knowledgeable of what's going on and then leading them to doing the thing. And that's a lot of power in that because we see in Eve, there's the power of leading them astray, but we also see in the new Eve, Mary, the power of leading them to, the public ministry. So
Oh,
I like
100%. I think one more thing to add on that, like the women have a great deal of effect in that area, but then also
it.
your boys can too. Like whether you're a
Oh,
girl with a community of girls or a guy with community of guys, your direct community and your direct just circle of people that you hang out with can also do the same thing. And I recognize that a lot in college. My boys who I hung out with consistently, if I
yes.
told them I'm going to be a certain way, not only am I going to more likely recognize the ways I act out just because I said I was not going to do it, but if you have good friends, they're likely going to call you out as well, or have a different
Absolutely.
side conversation to keep you accountable. So yeah, I think women have a special effect, and I think even more of effect on a guy than the boys will. But the boys can also have the same changing effect on any habit that you got to break.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And from someone from the business world, I think was it Warren Buffett that like started the quote of like you're a product of your five closest friends, or is that someone else?
Hey, it might have been Warren Buffett, but I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely having a close circle of friends that are Catholic and believe and have those same values as you is important for sure. And I also like how you mentioned, not doing the things where you kind of fall into the traps. However, we know that we do fall into the traps sometimes. Have you seen that by living out the Catholic faith, people knowing that you're Catholic, and then you falling into the traps? Is how you go about repentance ever brought people closer to the faith than even you just living out the faith, like living out the faith in the a perfect sense?
Yeah,
Because
no, I think repentance definitely. Over the last couple years, and especially since getting married too, like repentance from any fault has become more important to me. And like recognizing the ways that I've like fallen away and maybe hurt my wife or said things I shouldn't have said or anything like that. The more you apologize, the more you like begin to mend those gaps of between who you want to be and who you actually are, the quicker you will grow. And I think I saw that a lot. I think just mentioning, kind of back to one of our past questions, when you say that you're Catholic, um, people look at you a little bit differently and they tend to have a lot more questions. So also when you mess up, people will have questions. But
yes,
what's also interesting is as people ask you and you're open to conversations about your faith, about what you believe, even in recognizing you're not perfect, people almost respect you more because it's very human to not be perfect. Not I've never met a perfect guy other than our boy Jesus. So people often have even more opportunity to ask questions and to be curious about whatever it is that you believe. When you recognize you're not perfect, and you see that all the time, like people repenting from a past life. I think this is funny. I've seen it all over social media today. Jelly Roll won 3 Grammys last night. The man, and he's just had a total reversion to his faith. And I don't think he's Catholic as of now, but he's in this place where he's unapologetically living out his faith, even though his past is very different than what he's living out now. And he's very outspoken about that. People have a lot of respect for that, and honestly, are led to the faith when you can admit, "Hey, I have not always been this person, but this is who I'm trying to be." And repenting from that publicly, but then also in those that relationships that you've hurt people, sharing those things because it can really have an effect on people,
yeah,
especially because not everybody knows they're not perfect.
absolutely. And that's definitely what I've experienced. I had a great opportunity in college, and I was so blessed that I was able to go there and almost immediately because of joining the Catholic Student Association on campus, living out the Catholic faith. And a lot of people started to recognize me as someone who was Catholic and maybe like one of the Catholic guys on campus. I eventually held like some board roles in the organization. But, playing baseball and hanging out with roommates who see you every single day, 24/7, people eventually see you fall. And I've noticed that in my times of repentance, that has moved them more towards the faith than any of the great successes I've done or any of the times I had a great moment of preaching or anything like that. The repentance was definitely what brought them closer to encountering Christ, maybe through me than any of those other moments. So I like that you mentioned that.
And I think that's a cool thing to highlight too, because I think that's part of resistance as well, is like the belief that you have to be perfect before you share your faith.
Mhm.
I've seen that with a lot of my friends and just some of my community as well. They're like, well, I don't know if I can really live this out yet and say these things because I'm not quite the person I want to be. I'm still fighting these battles. I'm still defeating this sin. And
Mhm.
at the end of the day, like you're saying, people often get a whole lot more out of someone who is actively fighting a battle than someone who's already won. And I
Yeah.
think that's really significant to highlight.
I think they call that like the Superman effect because like for a while in the comic books, the Superman was about to like go bankrupt. Essentially, they almost had to like kill off Superman because he was so perfect that nothing beat him, and that's why they had to eventually invent kryptonite in order to like make the books interesting again. So people don't love a perfect person because it's unrelatable. So it's this idea of show your vulnerability at times. So I like that.
Yeah.
Now, I'd love to talk about Lent. That's coming up, and you've been doing ministry now for 10 plus years, like you mentioned, but you recently came out with a book for Lent. Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. I think doing ministry for 10 plus years, I can say kind of lightly. I've been posting for 10 years since middle school.
Okay.
But
That's
I
still
don't
really
I don't know
impressive.
if I've been impacting people that long. Hopefully, at least a couple people here and there. But yeah, the book for Lent has been a long time project of mine, and kind of combining all the things that I've talked about. Resistance is very real inside of writing, and really what I did to start, I felt this pull in my heart maybe about 2 years ago. I would say 2 or 3 years ago, um, just to write a book and to put it out there because I already have all these writings. I've been writing a blog pretty consistently, like at least 2 to 3 times a month, if not weekly, for the past 4 or 5 years. So there's a lot of content that I have out there, and you probably follow a couple of blogs and get them in your email. After you delete the email, the blog kind of dies. So I felt this pull in my heart, but also had the ambition to turn them into a book. So last year, I guess about 18 months ago, I finally, like maybe 2 years ago, finally pulled all these writings together. I printed them all out. It was over 100 different blogs, and I read them, and then also looked at the data and kind of stacked ranked them to the ones that performed the best and people sent around and had the most views and those kind of things. And ended up pulling the best 40 or so different blogs um, that people loved, and turned those into a book. And then with that, in Discernment 180 or Exodus 90 kind of style, paired that with a weekly accountability where you can look back at, well, you start Lent and it helps you, the book helps you walk through and pick what you're going to be fasting and giving and praying and what that Lenten experience looks like for you. And if you're not familiar with it, those are kind of the three pillars: prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, and figuring out how you can live those things and challenge yourself in your spiritual life through those three pillars. So the book helps you define those things for you and maybe level it up from doing the same thing every single year. Very common in my family. It was we just gave up sweets, and it gets really mundane and then also not really challenging. And not that you need to pick something that challenges you for the challenge's sake, but really just to remind yourself consistently throughout the day, I am fasting. This is going to be a little bit more difficult, and this is why. So the book walks you through those three pillars and how to choose what you are giving up and what you're going to be committing to. And then 6 days a week, it walks you through just a daily reflection. And then on Sundays, it challenges you to go back to what you committed to and asks you the question: did you live this out? Is this asking too much? Is this asking not enough? And how did this challenge you this week? So it's
Mhm.
been a really cool project for me. And last year, I soft launched it with only a PDF to about 100 or 200 people, and it had really good reviews. People were excited about it. So this year I turned it into not only a physical book, but also an audio book, and then the virtual free ebook is still available as well. So
Very
it's
good.
been a really cool experience and something, just a side project that I spend Saturdays in the coffee shop working on and learning so much about business and about launching and all these things. It's a lot of work to launch a
Right.
book. especially if you're doing it out of your home office. I have like a stack of boxes over here of stuff that I'm going to be mailing here soon, and yeah, like there's so many moving pieces. So I've learned a lot through it. The Lord has done a lot of good through it, and yes, it's also my prayer that it impacts a lot of lives through the reflections that are out there. So yeah,
So,
no, it's been a lot of fun, and Lent is just around the corner. I think when you publish this, it'll just be a couple of days away. So yeah,
absolutely.
it's an exciting time.
And for those that are listening, what's the book called? And I'm gonna put some stuff in the show notes so that they can find you. But just in case.
Yeah, yeah. The book is called Lenten Refresh. Easy to remember, all about refreshing your Lenten experience. And it's on Amazon. It's also at lentenrefresh.com. But yeah, like Tyler said, these things will be in the show notes. So yeah, go check it out. And if you're not in a place where you need to buy another book, there's also the free version available. And then the free audiobook will be on Spotify as well. So go check it out.
That's awesome. How is it though writing reflections? I That's what I started doing for the Catholic Student Association on campus, and I started doing weekly gospel reflections. That's what I did, and I found that I had grown personally a ton during this process. Um, how have you grown through writing?
Yeah. For me at first it was super like mundane and difficult and anxiety inducing. Like it'd be like when you're applying for a job and you like freakishly reread the same resume 1,000 times. That's
Mm-hmm.
exactly how it felt every single week publishing the blog at first, because I didn't know what I was doing, and I would apologize at the end if I messed anything up theologically, and it was just really funny to look back at some of the blogs that I wrote. But for me now, like it is so life giving because I've built this the muscle against resistance of all the questions and what are people going to think, what are people going to say, and gotten to this place where everything that I write and everything that I live through becomes an opportunity of something to write about, and it's really relatable. Like
Yeah.
I love getting emails back from people who read it, and they're like, "Oh, this is really impactful. This is similar to my priest homily this week." I even have some clergy who do follow it, and to hear their words of encouragement and advice is so rewarding as well. But yeah, once you start writing and you write consistently, it becomes very easy um, to write and to like tie the story together, and it almost becomes harder to find the time because it can be that's the more difficult part. But yeah, your life. There's a saint that writes about this, and I'm not going to remember who it was. But they say that the deeper you fall in love with the faith, the brighter the world becomes. And I think the same thing's true when you're consistently writing or even just consistently praying and reading. The more that you pull yourself back into the scriptures and write about them and learn from them and give yourself dedicated time to share about them, the brighter the world around you becomes because you want to keep relating all these things back to it. And I've seen that like time and time again. That the more that I write, the more consistent that I become, the brighter the things around me really pour into my writing, and also the more relatable and impactful it becomes.
That's awesome. I like how you mentioned that you would apologize at the end for any theological errors that you made. That has been one of the hardest parts for me, and I'm still honestly sometimes worried about it. I get fearful almost every time I start a podcast, like, oh, like Holy Spirit, please just make sure I don't say anything theologically wrong. And I think that's almost a uniquely Catholic problem because we do have like that structure that the church gives us, and I'm super thankful for it. Because kind of in contrast, some of our Protestant brothers and sisters have a little bit more freedom to, be colorful with their language because there's no one like kind of like looking over. There's no boundaries. They're not playing with inside the borders of any game. How'd you get over that?
Well, the first part that got me over that, it's so relatable because yeah, I went to Baylor, and so many of my friends like don't understand that we have a catechism and that it's not a Bible and it's not scripture, but it's purely just our guidelines and our bumpers in the side of the bowling lane, like keeps you
Yeah.
just going towards the goal, and let you know what's right and what's wrong. Um, but yeah, like at first, my dad and my mom, no joke, they would literally ask me like why do you write that? Like if you scroll back on my Instagram, I'm sure you could find a couple of them where I'm like I'm not a theologian or something along those lines. Um, but yeah, my parents would be like, why do you write that? Like you don't need to apologize. And I was like, well, I just think it's important to like for people to recognize I'm not speaking in like in the seat of Peter. Like I'm not the Pope. I'm not a theologian. I'm not someone who is proclaiming doctrine. I'm purely just sharing. But then I think also people recognize that. Like I don't have any theologians or the Pope doesn't follow me yet, so I'm not worried about being wrong. Um, and they know that I'm just a guy, and I do mess up. Like on one of my videos recently, I've been saying obligatory holy water, like as I walk into a church, just like laughing about it. Like I didn't even think that that was anything wrong. But somebody slid in my DMs and was like, "Why do you say this? Like this seems like not Catholic." And I was, "Are you even
Oh,
Catholic?"
really?
And I was like, "Whoa!" So first of all, sorry. Secondly, like I didn't even realize that's what I was saying, and I was mostly just being consistent about what I said in the last video and kind of trying to be funny. Um, you're not obliged to take the holy water, but
I thought it was pretty funny. I
um,
saw it. I thought it was funny.
yeah. But like you can't be afraid of comments like that. Like I
Yeah.
still like when I got that DM, I was like my palms were sweating, and I was like, I don't know what to say back. I'm like gonna hurt their feelings. Are they gonna say something else rude and mean? And I'm like, no. At the end of the day, they don't really care. They left it on red, and that was it. And like that's the reality of most haters and also people who are gonna disagree with you. You also, as a creator, have or a blog writer or anything like that, have the power to just delete the comment or delete the email. So you don't have to respond to everybody either.
Yeah.
But there will be people who call you out or who disagree with you, or especially if you're Catholic and you're posting about it or writing about it, there will be Protestants and atheists and all other kinds of faith trying to tear it down and tell you why you're wrong, which always kind of makes me laugh as well. But like it's a good challenge, and I think all the
Yeah.
questions usually come from a good place. Even the
Yeah.
one about the holy water, she just wants it to be reverent, and they wanted it to be coming from a good place, and I get it. And I won't say it like that again. And anybody questioning a Catholic belief about Mary or the saints or the Pope, like in a sense, hopefully you could say maybe they're worried about my theology and they want me to be all in a good place with
Mhm.
God. And also, that's a respectful place to come from. And usually, haters have a good heart, or they're jealous, or both. And you kind of just have to recognize that, like over time, there are going to be people who like really want to get in your way. And sometimes it's people who want to call you out when you say something inappropriate, or maybe it's that they don't want you to be successful. And both can be true. But you just kind of have to acknowledge it, take it with a grain of salt, and move forward because not everyone's opinion at the end of the day matters.
Yeah.
But when you're doing something good, usually like less than 5% of comments and people and responses are going to be negative because people who love what you're doing are going to respect it and are going to be excited for you and will hopefully get something from it too.
No, I like how you mentioned that because you kind of took more of like an external view of like what the other people might think. And when I was doing this, I tried to look inward of like where this fear was coming from. And the reason I wanted to mention is because if there's anyone that's curious or scared to start a platform because they don't want to err on the side of caution, I think in my own personal experience, where that came from was maybe a little bit of pride and fear what other people would think of me, recognizing that that's probably not a good reason not to do something. And then also kind of giving yourself some grace, knowing that if you're fearful of running into theological error, you probably know a decent amount about theology in the first place. So kind of like doing that and then recognizing, hey, it's okay to fail sometimes. And yeah, like you said, delete the comment, apologize for it, and don't be scared of being humiliated. Like that's a little bit of the resistance you were talking about. So I appreciate you mentioning that.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's very real. Like, that's what kept me from being 100% real on my Instagram for 10 years. Like, I was saying good things and I was posting kind of cool things, I think, at the time,
Mhm.
but they weren't me. And I was holding back 5 or 10 or 20% of myself because I was honestly not even scared of the haters, just scared of what my friends were going to think, especially those who are not Catholic, or especially those who I went to grade school with who live a totally different life. And I don't want them to feel judged or that I'm a completely changed person either. Same guy, just grown a whole lot, and that's a very real thing that I get honestly all the time in my comments and in DMs and way more than I expected. Hey, thank you for doing this. I'm thinking about doing this, and it's crazy to just think like that's exactly where I was for like this is what I dreamed of doing, and I was there for probably like 9 or 10 years not doing it because I was scared of what people were going to think. But life is so much brighter on the other side, and people are going to say those things one way or the other, even if you're not actively proclaiming it. Maybe you're a little bit more relevant to them because they see it more often. But at the end of the day, they're still going to talk bad about you, and you can't really care and let it affect you. And all you can do really is to pray for them and to invite them into what you're doing. And if they don't want to accept it, then that's okay too. And I think part of that, maybe to segue, um, is as you kind of form your anyone's next jump, whether that's a career jump, maybe that's just a side hobby, writing, speaking, Instagram, anything. Um, there might be a shift in your community, and that's okay too. Like as you live out your faith and you change who you're becoming, and even trying to live it out in the workplace, maybe you've been in the workplace for 10 years and you're just converting, or anything like that. It is okay to lose friends, and it is okay to have people walk away from you, and not want to be near you. And you can't look at you growing as an excuse, you growing and offending somebody as an excuse to not grow. Because at the end of the day, those people might be challenged for months, years, decades until they really acknowledge the things inside of them that are holding them back and to grow. And that's okay too. You don't have to fully dismiss somebody, but if someone doesn't want to hang out or they don't want to respond to your texts or your calls, you don't have to expect them to hang out, but maybe still reach out every couple weeks or every couple months and continue to be that friend to them. But don't have your feelings hurt when someone doesn't want to be as close as they used to when you're going in a
Yeah.
different direction as well. Because, I mean, you can't always be aligned with everybody and you can't force someone to be your friend. And if you're changing your heart or a friend is changing their heart, um, you can't totally let it offend you because you know you got to do what's best for you and invite them into it, but you can't change their heart along with yours.
Yeah, and sometimes it's even okay for you to recognize that it's you that needs to leave the friendship too, and
Yeah,
perhaps not just being like okay when people don't want to be your friend, but being okay finding different friends as well. And Socrates, I think it's Socrates that talks about like three different types of friendships, where the highest one being the virtuous friendship, and those are definitely important to have so that you can help each other reach salvation. So I like that you mentioned that. You also mentioned making different jumps, and in that segue, I'm glad you did that because I kind of want to talk about making jumps into different careers or making decisions because you've been doing this for quite a long time. You're a young Catholic male. You recently got married. I'm sure there's been a lot that you've discerned about throughout your life as a Catholic. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on discernment and what that's supposed to look like.
dude.
And I'll
Yeah, such a good question.
yeah, I'll give you the liberty to do that however you please. I don't know what it's looked like for you in terms of vocation or in terms of job, but how do you discern?
Yeah, wow, loaded question. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I've discerned so many things throughout my life, and especially as you take your faith even more seriously, you have to like. There's a different level of discernment that comes along with that, because you're recognizing, similar to getting married and making choices with your spouse, as you're a Catholic or you're diving in deeper into your faith, your choices aren't only yours anymore. Even if you're a single person, they are yours and God's, and most of the time, a decision that God gets to make along with you. So yeah, no, really, really good question. And I think like the first big jump that most people have to make, and for me was very stressful, was going to college. Like whenever you discern where you go to college, that is the deciding factor of the rest of your life, whether you like it or not. It decides where you're going to spend the next 4 years, but also the friends you're going to make, the type of career you're going to go into. It also most of the time decides where you're going to live. If I went to Baylor, I'm most likely to end up in Dallas, like I have. But if I went to Notre Dame, it's more likely I go to Chicago. Or if I went to any other college, I'm probably going to end up to a bigger city closer to there. And then that also affects the spouse that you end up with. If I didn't go to Baylor, I would not have met my wife because I met her through an introduction from a friend that I met at Baylor. So it is crazy to think about how much your life can change from one decision, which is why discernment is important to begin with. But for me, a lot of the time, going back to my decision for college, it is giving God what you think is best and then allowing Him to take action. For me, that looked like my grandpa helped me out a lot with college, and he was like, "Hey, I'll allow you. I'll give you help to go to any university you want, along with your parents and some other people in our family, but you need to know where you're going and why." And I think that's more stressful than just going to the local community college or to the local university just down the road or downtown, because I had to really make a deeper decision on what I was going to get out of college, why I was going there, and all those things. Um, so I had no idea. I had no idea what I wanted, and I'm a Catholic, so I just said Notre Dame, and then I applied and didn't get in, and then I didn't have a second choice, but I applied to like 12 schools because I just didn't know what I wanted. So I would stack rank. My dad made me stack rank, kind of like the whiteboard behind me, on there, all these different logos, and like once a week, every couple weeks, I would rearrange them on like what was important and what logo I saw that was sticking out to me, like who knows? Texas Tech is doing great in football. Let me move them up a little bit higher. Like all these crazy things, but they didn't have much prayer aligned with it um, until I like got deeper and deeper in the process, and I was like, wow, I really need to start praying about this and allowing it to be get made more clear. And I didn't decide my college decision until spring of my senior year, which is, I mean, about a little bit late. About half people don't decide until the spring or late spring, and for me, it was giving God everything that I knew that I needed in a college experience, and was praying about it, and just allowed Him to make it abundantly clear. And sometimes within discernment, He'll give you a word or a perspective, or kind of a mentor of mine calls it a quickening. Like something just seems right about whatever appears in your mind as you pray, and you just pray with that, continue to pray with it, and that for me in my college decision was the rain. And it makes me laugh because that's a really weird thing for you to be like given in prayer, like rain. Okay, rain.
Right.
It rains all the time in Texas. That's real helpful. But for me, as I visited colleges, every single college I visited about eight in the first go about this. Every single college was a beautiful day like today, blue skies, not a cloud in the sky, slight breeze, 60 degrees, and I was like, this is not helpful. God told me rain. None of these schools are it's going to rain. And I honestly would get so mad. We'd get to a college, and my mom would be like, "What is your issue? Why do you get so mad? Like these trips are for you." And I'm like, I couldn't tell her this right away. It's like she'd be like, "You're crazy." She's Catholic. She gets it. But like trying to tell somebody what God told you or what you think is right, like doesn't usually go over well. It kind of has to
Yeah.
be retrospective perspective. Um, so I wouldn't speak up about it, and I was like, yeah, it just doesn't seem right. And I really still wasn't confident either, so I wasn't gonna say like this is what I was told.
Yeah, yeah.
But then all visited all the schools except for Baylor, and I honestly was like cursing off Baylor. Like, I'm not gonna go there. And then when I got there, I finally stepped on the campus, and it was raining, and I was like, whoa. And I got this immense peace, and like all of a sudden, it was just so clear this is where I needed to be. And like I said, my entire career trajectory and relationships and everything changed literally from that moment, from just being available and not dismissing a crazy word God gave me in prayer.
Yeah.
And God doesn't always, it wasn't audible, it wasn't like honestly that clear. It was just a word in my head, rain. And continuing to pray with that, the Lord made it clear. And He doesn't have to give you a word, He doesn't have to speak audibly, He doesn't have to like shake the earth in front of you for it to be clear of what He's doing. But when you offer Him anything in discernment, He continues to make something clear, and He'll give you an opportunity indoors. And I think Father Mike Schmitz talks about this in discernment. Um, but the beautiful thing about free will is that God will open and close doors all around you. And when you walk through an open door, sometimes the next one's closed, and you got to walk back out and go through the next one. But God will show you exactly where you need to be and who He's calling you to be when you give Him the opportunity to show up. And I saw that even in my meeting my wife. This is the last discernment story I'll share. But I just heard the priesthood for 8 months. I was going to be that guy senior year to have everything figured out. So going into my junior year, I'm like, I'm going to be that guy. I'm discerned for 6 months. God's going to tell me to be a priest. I'm going to go to seminary, or He's going to tell me not to, and I won't go to seminary. It's going to be easy, just like 6 months, and I'll figure it out. And surely He didn't. But I started discerning. There's a formalized discernment process called Discernment 180, which is really cool title, kind of like doing a full 180, but then also it's a 180-day commitment of prayer, fasting, and asceticisms and things that allow you to really figure out what God is calling you to. You commit to a dating fast, and you have to be an altar server and do all these really, really cool things. And it's fantastic. It changed my life, my prayer life, my commitment, and leveled up every part of me. But those 6 months started to come to an end. I did my retreat, visited the seminary, and there was zero answer. Ended in the middle of the summer. And about that time, my parents also started to question, like, have you ever thought about what was this thing? And I was like, oh, I have to tell them, like, this is going to be so stressful. So discernment too can be hard, especially whenever the people around you may not fully understand what you're doing or why you're doing it. And my parents are Catholic; they totally respect that decision.
Yeah.
Uh, but I didn't want to have their voices and anyone's opinion speaking into um, what was to come next, because I just wanted it to be mine. I didn't want them to be encouraging or discouraging of it. I just wanted God to speak into it. Um, and that's also a very hard part of discernment. But yeah, I got to the end of the 6 months, and it was not clear. But I think just to kind of wrap it up, the more that I gave it to God to make it clear, and like, Lord, want me to, if you want me to get married, like, give me a great woman, and I'm open to it, whether that's now or in a couple years. And if you want me to go to seminary, continue to make that clear. So the conversation of seminary and my career were honestly at the same exact time, and gave me a really hard decision, especially as our interview season came up. In the major that I went through, you had to do like 14 or 15 interviews senior year with all these different companies, and then you get a couple of job offers, and you decide where you go. And the first one I get, six-figure offer from my internship, and the Lord is just like, no. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, this is a really good offer. I mean, it's great money. I'm gonna have nothing to worry about. And like, I told my parents about it, and then I told them I rejected it, and they're like, "You are crazy." And I'm like, they said you're crazy, but we trust you. And I was like, thank you, but that doesn't help me. Like, I know, like, I don't know, I'm just as crazy. But then the Lord like will slowly open doors, and shortly after, I'd love to actually go back and look, but I think within the month of me closing that door,
Mm.
one of my good buddies, we went golfing for the last time. He graduated that semester. We went to go hit golf balls into the lake and just hang out and be boys. He introduced me to my wife. And so as I closed one door, another opened, and I was like, oh, wow. And then, funny and terrible, but within the first 2 or 3 dates, I was ready. I was just like, I just don't know. I'm not sure. And as I'm ending our third phone call, I'm like ready to like just be like, hey, this was great. Like, I don't know if I'm ready to date anybody. We're long distance the whole time. She lived in Florida. And I was like, I just don't know about all this. I went into the call thinking I was going to break up with her. And something overtook me and was like, we should go on a virtual date. I'll take you out to virtual coffee. I'll send you a gift card or something. And I was like, I ended the call and she said yes. And I was like, what just happened? This is crazy. But like, to kind of relate back, the Lord will do crazy things in and around your life. And I didn't think that was that big of a thing at the moment. But that one moment of me not ending it and taking her out on a coffee date led to us getting married just about 2 years later on the dot, which is crazy. And then shortly after that, I got a job offer, which felt right, followed some great mentors, and led me to the same career I'm in today. So all that to say, a long-winded answer about a couple discernment processes. The Lord, as you give Him things, He will make things clear and other things very evident of what you should and should not do. And over time, you just have to trust Him and recognize, hey, you may take a wrong step. I was pretty certain He wanted me to break up with her. And then this whole thing happened, and I was like, oh, wow, nope. He kind of was like, you're wrong, I'm right. Trust me in this. And then
Wow.
here we are today in the best relationship I've ever been in my entire life. So the Lord will honestly direct your path in any direction He needs you to go. And you have to trust Him in that. But part of trusting is also taking action. And so whether you're a single person worried about dating and or asking somebody out about what people are going to think, or a creator or a business person or anything, you're about to take that next step. Just take the jump. The worst that can happen is the Lord says no, closes the door, and leads you to something even greater. And that's kind of the best part of discernment, is that it's trial by fire. There's going to be things that you think are right on, and there's going to be things that you think are definitely wrong, and you could be wrong about both of them. And the Lord will lead you right where He needs you if you continue to keep your heart open and tie that with prayer and honestly, like we said before, confession and adoration and mass. When you're doing the things to keep yourself accountable and give you more opportunity to stay more keen to God's voice, you're more likely to see Him show up in your life. So, yeah, discernment's been a crazy ride for me, and always, always, always discerning what's to come next. Children and career and all things like that. It's always an exciting thing to be discerning with God, but He always has the best plan, and even in the most unexpected of situations, you just have to trust Him and to see what He's going to do with it.
That's awesome. I love how you mentioned almost a combination between like a formalized discernment process and then also just kind of like more personal experiences. I think both hold a lot of good weight. I do suggest that, like, especially for people discerning vocations, like doing a formal discernment process is, I've seen that be beneficial for a lot of people. I haven't like done one myself, but I have seen that be a good track for a lot of people to take. Because I think a lot of times people, like you mentioned, hearing a voice or hearing the word or things of that nature, I think sometimes people get fearful of trusting that voice. I think they feel like they can't trust themselves, that their life's been filled with a lot of trauma, with a lot of mistakes, So trusting that voice can be hard. And I think there's nothing wrong with taking a formalized discernment process. So I'm glad you kind of mentioned both.
Yeah, one thing to add there too, like as you seek to trust God with everything for the first time, you're gonna
Mhm.
mess up. There's gonna be missteps. We all still mess up. Even priests I know mess up all the time. And they got to realign their steps on their calling and the mission for their church and everything like that. But along with that is like giving God the opportunity to slowly form your sense of connection with Him, and deciding and being able to feel the difference between anxiety in your heart and the Holy Spirit in your gut and everything in between. God will lead you in different ways, from your mind to your heart to your gut and anywhere in between. And you've got to be able to feel the difference and pray with that over time. And I'm still figuring that out. And I think
Mhm.
just the difference of being able to feel it, pray with it, and say, hey, like this, looking back, was anxiety. This is where I felt it. Just take note of that. And this was a conviction. I was wrong about it, but I know 6 months ago God gave me this conviction, and I felt it down here. Listen to that and take note of that.
Yeah.
Or this word popped into my mind and ended up being right. Take note of that. And just
Yeah.
allowing God to slowly form it. I think God will impact everyone in a different way, but He'll likely be consistent in the ways that He shows up. But it's very, very small. It's usually that small whisper that it's Him showing up. He's not gonna fly past your. He might, but he probably won't fly past your window with one of those tails on a plane telling you where to go. He's gonna just whisper to you the right direction. Turn right, turn left. This is the door. And over time, you'll be able to hear that voice more and more consistently.
Yeah, I think it's important that to recognize that God uses all things for His will, and even if you've led down a path through your own accord that wasn't necessarily right, He'll use it to hopefully make you into a better person, as so long as you continue building that connection with Him. And the connection with Christ is similar to any connection with anybody else, which is it becomes more clear the more it's built. So that connection gets deeper and clearer with Him, the more you engage with it. So I think that's important to know. Now, you do a lot of like running endurance stuff. We've mentioned this over our phone call. I believe you've done an Ironman. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
And I also do endurance running. I played baseball in college. Now I do things like marathons. I'm training for my first ultra this year. I find it to be a great form of prayer. How has this helped you in your faith life? Or are these kind of like different, separate things? Is more like to keep your body in shape, and the spiritual stuff is to keep your spirit in shape, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's all connected. And I think the endurance, it definitely is not for everybody, but it
Mhm.
is, for me, been the most impactful place in my entire life to encounter the Lord. And
Mhm.
it's mostly because it's the challenge and you're getting to the core of who you are. A lot of time alone, a lot of mental fortitude, and a lot of doing things that you didn't think were possible, and allowing God to show up and also heal you. There's gonna be injuries. There's gonna be twisted ankles and shin splints and torn muscles and like cuts from thorns and all these kind of things. Um, and allowing the Lord to heal you through those things and offering it all up as a prayer. Yeah. So, I mean, I grew up with a family that was very into running. My mom did 3 or 4 marathons growing up. Then she got my dad into it a couple of years after that. And I grew up going to races, and it got me so excited to start running myself. We used to hold these posters for my mom that said "Run like a cheetah," and that's been a family saying kind of ever since then. I'd be like, "There's little pictures of me running around when I was a kid with these signs and hugging my mom after a race." And like those were the core moments that made me into the person that loved running. So I understand, if you've never been exposed to running, how it is the worst thing ever,
Mhm.
because it's terrible. It sucks.
Mhm.
But when you find community, whether in your family or your friends or even just on a team, it makes it a little bit easier. But for me, it's been probably the number one thing that's allowed me to level up my spiritual life and encounter the Lord. Mostly because runs become a place of silence and mental reflection and inspiration and creativity. And if you're a runner, you can go to a run club most days out of the week, but more likely than not, you're probably going to run alone on the treadmill or outside or have to do these things alone. And rather than drowning it out with some inappropriate podcast or something that's brain rot,
Mhm.
music and EDM and all things that I have done before and I can enjoy on occasion. Um, but rather than wasting a run like that, to run in silence or to run just to classical music or just to music without words. I often do actually run the EDM music now that doesn't have words, and it gets me fired up. It just gets my wheels turning. But when I was training for marathons and then also the Ironman, in the Ironman race, you can't wear headphones, and
Yes.
so you have to train in a situation that makes you used to that. When you're going to do a race for 13 or 14 hours with a maximum of 17 hours and not have music, you can't train always with music and then take it away on race day. So there were endless amounts of bikes and runs, and then obviously swimming. You can't listen to music unless you have some really dope headphones. Um, so there's so much time to reflect, to realize the person, tying the back our conversation too, realizing the ways you failed, realizing the ways that you've really fallen short, and the ways that you need to grow. When you have that time in silence, whether that's in a personal prayer time or even in the athletic sense, you have such a greater opportunity to grow and work through all of those shortcomings and all those failures and allow the Lord to show up and also to experience His beauty. When you're out on the trail, you're out, even if you're in the city. I live near the Katy Trail in downtown Dallas, and we're in the middle of the city, but there's still plenty of nature and beautiful people and beautiful just experiences out here on the trail. Um, no matter where you live, there's an opportunity to experience God's beauty out on the run as well. So all of those things are inherently spiritual if you allow them to be. And of course, doing the hard thing, it can be spiritual as well. And I kind of like to to do the combination of David Goggins and Father Mike Schmitz, kind of the right in between the two. Not at all related, but if you have a run that meets somewhere in the middle, like the crazy hard, like who's going to carry the boats, kind of action, stay hard, between like an epic homily with Father Mike Schmitz and the Beatitudes and the virtues, you you kind of stay in this really beautiful place that helps you grow, and you bring that same fortitude and courage and excitement and energy from the David Goggins mentality into the faith and the depth of the Catholic faith, and you land in this really epic place, in a place we're seeing honestly a lot of growth just in the world right now. There are so many Christians and even inherently Catholic creators that are in that endurance hybrid athlete mode, and it is uber motivating. It is exciting, but it's also a place where you're going to grow a whole lot, especially if you are um, seeing it and offering it up as a prayer. Now, that doesn't mean you're praying the whole time. There were a couple of times during the Ironman that I whipped out my handy decade rosary and just got to have some time in actual prayer. But the rest of it is purely a mindset and allowing God. I find myself the best prayer before a run is, Lord, I give you this time. Show up how you need to. And my mind will wander so far, but I know that beginning the run in that prayer gives him that time and gives him the opportunity to show up and offering up the will of that run to him. Gives him so many windows to have people say hi or different experiences or a dog run up or anything like that to experience beauty and then also the creativity and excitement that's happening in your own mind of all the things you're thinking through and to be inspired by. So yeah, there's definitely a dichotomy between spiritual growth and endurance athlete and physical growth, but there's also just this unique um, unity and beauty in that. And I find myself, as I joked, right in between Father Mike Schmitz and David Goggins.
Yeah, absolutely. You basically took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly kind of like a lot of the approach that I take when they're running, and that's why I've, recently in my training been taking a picture of my watch in the morning and putting a reflection on my Instagrams because I try to like when I tell people I pray during my run. Sometimes it is using those formalized prayers, but a lot of times it's just offering up the run and having God kind of enter into that run with me and reflect on those moments. So that's beautiful, and I think like you mentioned, it might not be for everybody, but if for those that are listening, if they can pick something hard to do that allows them to do something slightly sacrificial, something slightly ascetic in a way, and then offer that up to God in a time of silence, it could be beneficial and they could receive some similar results. So I'm
Yeah.
glad that you mentioned that.
One last thing I'll add there for all those looking to do a hard thing and maybe level up your year in a certain way. I know the year's already started, but it's never too late. There is a guy on Instagram, a guy on social media called Jesse Itzler. And do you follow him, Tyler? Are you familiar with him?
I don't follow him, but I've heard of him before.
Okay, so Jesse's a crazy entrepreneur, endurance athlete. He's also Christian, I believe. Don't take my word for that, but I think he is.
Is he the guy that
And
makes that big calendar?
yes, yeah. So he has this product
I think
called
he
the
might
Big
be
Ass
good.
Calendar. You got to buy one. You have to have one. I'm not paid to say this. I'm not sponsored by him, but I should be. And if I were to ever recreate it, it'd be called the Big Bass Calendar. But that has changed my life because it's a cool calendar. I mean, it's the whole year on one page. Every month is its own line. It's 30 lines, 30 like cells long. It's awesome. You have it on the wall. Mine's right there. But the really cool part about it is he has a video that he does every single year, and he always posts about it. But he dives through his process and what makes the calendar significant and how he plans his year. As a billionaire, entrepreneur, father, and doing all these other cool things, he has a really epic process to plan out his year to make it worth it and trackable and something he can feel like he accomplished at the end of the year. And the things that go into that are, like we said, choosing a very hard thing to do. Something he uses the word misogi. It's a Japanese word that really boils down to something that has a 50-50 chance of actually being completed. So something that hard where you look at the year and you're like, oh dang, like that's going to be a lot of work, or that's going to be a big challenge. For him, that's been running ultras, that's been publishing a book, that's been living a year with monks, or living, I think it's 30 days with monks, something along the lines. But he's done some crazy things. And then along with one misogi, he also does 4 winning habits. So every quarter he chooses a habit that changes his life. For me, this quarter, that's cussing, just rooting out cussing for good, and keeping yourself accountable for that. And then along with that is also 6 mini adventures. So maybe you have things you've been wanting to do, but you haven't done them quite yet, and you need an excuse to go do them. Go to a concert, go to a state park, go do this hike, go do whatever. Something that's going to take a day or a couple of days, maybe take a week off work to go knock it out. Doing a mini adventure every other month, every 8 weeks. He does those 3 things. 1 misogi, a year-defining major event. 6 mini adventures, things, and excuses to go do something epic. And then 4 winning habits. And so as you're looking to have a big goal or change your life, that's something that's helped me. It's like, hey, by the end of the year, I want to do this. One of our mini adventures this year is going to be doing a high rocks, and doing one of those races, and just getting out of your comfort zone to train for something that is completable, but then also is going to be a really fun memory.
Yeah.
If you need any of your listeners or yourself need an excuse to level up your goal setting this year, that's my favorite way of doing it. This is the 2nd year, but I'm probably a lifelong customer of the big Bass calendar.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I know some family members that use it. I use a lot of the same approaches on my own little liturgical calendar.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
but I definitely like a lot of those little formulas that he uses, and it's a good approach to take. Um, Being someone that does have that kind of schooling and the mental health background, trying to get through that schooling, I will say that I do recognize that I'm blessed and fortunate enough to maybe go do hard things that maybe look hard and look cool and are fun and speculative in a way. They're I'm doing a 50-mile race that looks cool. That might not be everybody's hard. That's certainly not hard for some people. Some people 50-mile race is nothing. They do 250-mile races. Your hard doesn't have to be something that impresses the masses on social media or anything like that. And it's whatever you're willing to engage in and possibly fail at. So for all those that are listening, that maybe your hard is going on a 20-minute walk in the morning without headphones, then that's your hard, and try to do that. So just kind of re-emphasizing that.
Yeah.
Now we do have a final section of the podcast called the rapid fire round. We've had a few people get under a minute. There's no worries if you don't, but it's kind of cool bragging rights. You'll be one of the few interviewees that have gotten it under a minute. But I read the first question, and then after the first question, I'll start the timer and give you a minute to respond. Let me know when you're ready.
How many questions is it?
It's 5 questions.
Oh, okay, we got this. Let's go.
All right, all right. That's confident. I like it. All right. Who is your favorite saint? And if you've had one day to spend with him or her, what would you ask or do?
St. Philip Neri, and I would love to spend a day at his orphanage and just see the way that he interacts with the kids and the joy that he spread with them and the kind of conversations that he had.
What is your most controversial take on a Catholic topic?
Ooh, my most controversial take is that purgatory should not be that controversial.
You have just been elected Pope. What is your first move?
World Youth Day, twice a year.
Favorite religious order and why?
My favorite religious order? Oh my gosh. That's a hard question. Probably the Legionaries of Christ because they're so widespread. They've had such an impact, and I'm very good friends with a couple of them.
What single virtue would you want to be remembered by?
Ooh, joy.
45 seconds. You got
Woo! Come on now. Hopefully, I didn't cut any of the answers short, but
it. That's awesome. There's so many good ones. First of all, the Legionaries, I know like a lot of friends that's what their answer was. And I talked to them and they went to like, they're part of like Regnum Christi and they went to a school with the Legionaries, but I've learned about them pretty recently. So when he said that, I was like, oh, that's awesome. That's cool. Because I've just now been learning a little bit more about them. Um, but yeah, that's a hard one. There's so many good ones and all their different charisms. So World Youth Day though, twice a year. So World Youth Days, World Youth Day.
World Youth Days, World Youth Quarter. I don't even care. But I think that it's the most impactful thing that I think, I don't know who started it, but whenever it was started, it is so cool. And maybe it wouldn't be World Youth Day, but it would be like some sort of global conference that the Pope puts
Mm,
on for the youth. Seek
mm,
is really cool here in the States. We do that once a
mm.
year. But to see that on a global level, or just an excuse for more people to get together, stewarded by the Pope, it's been cool to see him do Zoom videos and stuff like that for some different
Yeah,
events, and use the technology in his favor, and not having to fly places. So, no, yeah, I think that would be really cool. It wouldn't necessarily be called World Youth Day anymore, but yeah, more of an opportunity for the Pope to be exposed to the youth. Like JP2 was the best at that, and I think Pope Leo is on the brink of being great at that as well.
very cool. And then you mentioned purgatory not being as controversial. I like that. That's a good answer.
I mean, like every Protestant ever acts like that is the most not biblical, most controversial thing, and like at its core, it's purely an idea. Like no one actually knows. We're gonna say this is what we believe, but like you and I won't know until we get there. And also, I've never heard a sermon or a homily or anything really talking about purgatory. Like it is
Really?
very irrelevant to the normal life. Other than the fact that it is a grace we have it, so that we can be completely made clean before we enter in heaven.
Yeah.
So yeah, I always laugh when a Protestant from Baylor would always like, oh yeah, but what about purgatory? I'm like, dude, like it doesn't affect you whether you believe that deeply in your core or not, and you convert to Catholicism. It's not going to change how you live out the faith. What matters most is that you love the Eucharist and that you trust the church teaching.
Mm,
And if you have to work through things, even as you grow in your faith, that's okay too.
yeah. I like purgatory in the sense of like remembering to pray for those who have passed, the faithfully departed.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, and my approach kind of in always talking about purgatory, especially with a Protestant, is asking, do you think something unclean can enter heaven? And they typically go no, and then you respond with, then it's because we know in Catholic theology that if you're in purgatory, that means you're eventually going to heaven. So everyone in purgatory will go to heaven. It's a not a place but a state of being cleansed before you enter in heaven. So as soon as you get them on board that something unclean can't enter heaven, then it's like, okay, that's literally just the cleaning process after you die to get into heaven in such a way. It's almost like taking off your dirty shoes before entering someone else's house.
Yeah, like it's not that deep. Not that
Yeah, I
deep.
mean, I boiled that down probably too simplistically to be like completely accurate, but in describing it that way, they kind of get a little bit more on board.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
and then your virtue, you said joy, is that right?
Yes, of
Joy,
course.
I like that, and I think you live that out well. It's one of the reasons I chose you to be on this podcast. I saw your content, and I tell this to a lot of people I interview, but the reason I choose them is because I want people to be inspired about the joy of living out the Catholic faith, and I think you do that very well. So um,
Thank you. Praise God. That's awesome.
I appreciate you being on the podcast, man. And is there would you be okay leading us or getting us out in a prayer?
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for this time. Thank you for Mr. Ward and his impact here and all the listeners. I just pray that you impact our life this week. You help us to face resistance head on. You give us the strength through any barrier and anything that's holding us back to break through that, to offer it up to you. You help us to walk in discernment with confidence, to hear your voice more clearly, and that you help our hearts to be filled with joy, with your joy, as we pray in your most holy name. All glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Colin. I am super pleased. I think so many people are going to find so much fruit from this conversation. I'm so glad that you're able to offer up, discernment and how people can live out the faith in the corporate world. I'll have you stay on the podcast as everything uploads, but thank you so much, man.
Dude, let's go. Of course. Thank you.